They don't argue anymore. They don't explain. They don't send that text. They just go quiet. And most people mistake that silence for weakness. It isn't. There is a kind of person who was not always like this. They used to speak up. They used to try. They used to say, "Can we talk about this?" But somewhere along the way, after enough conversations that went nowhere, after enough effort that was never matched, after enough times being the only one who cared, they learned something. Not everyone deserves your words. Not every fight is worth your voice. And not every relationship is worth the exhaustion of trying to be understood by someone who never really wanted to understand you. So they went quiet. And in that silence, they found something unexpected. Peace. Here's what most people don't know about the ones who go quiet. It didn't start as detachment. It started as disappointment. Repeated, compounding, slow. They're the ones who gave full explanations to people who gave half-hearted apologies. They're the ones who stayed up thinking about conversations that the other person had already forgotten. They're the ones who replayed arguments in their heads, not to win, but to understand. And then one day, something shifted. They stopped explaining, not because they didn't care, but because they finally understood that some people don't want to understand you. They want to win. Psychology calls this emotional withdrawal, when a person pulls inward after repeated experiences of emotional invalidation. But let me tell you what psychology doesn't always say. It isn't damage. It's discernment. The person who goes quiet has learned to protect the most sacred thing they have, their energy, from the people who were never careful with it. Here's where the world gets it wrong. When someone goes quiet, people say they're distant. They say they're cold. They say they've changed. And they're right. They have changed. But not in the way people think. They haven't become less. They've become precise. They no longer waste a full conversation on someone who listens only to respond. They no longer send long messages to people who reply with one word. They no longer perform emotion for an audience that never took them seriously. What looks like coldness from the outside is actually clarity from the inside. They know who they are now. They know what they need. And they know, maybe for the first time, that their peace is worth more than any argument they could win. The world calls it shutting down. They call it waking up. But let's be honest, going quiet is not always painless. There are moments, usually at night, when they wonder if they made a mistake. When the silence they chose feels less like freedom and more like loneliness. When they scroll through an old conversation and feel something they can't quite name. Not regret, exactly, more like grief. Because they didn't stop caring. They never stopped caring. They just stopped showing it to people who didn't deserve to see it. And that is the part no one talks about. The strength it takes to love someone quietly, to wish them well from a distance, to choose peace over presence. The ones who go quiet are not empty. They are full of things they chose not to say, full of kindness they redirected toward themselves, full of love that finally found its way home. There is a common belief that the loudest person in the room is the most powerful, that the one who argues hardest wins, that the one who fights longest cares most. The person who goes quiet has learned something most people spend a lifetime missing. You don't need to be heard by everyone. You only need to be understood by the right ones. They have stopped performing their pain for people who use it against them. They have stopped justifying their boundaries to people who don't believe in them. They have stopped explaining their worth to people who have already decided how little it is. And in that decision, in the act of simply going quiet and walking away, they did something profoundly powerful. They chose themselves. Fully. Finally. Without apology. If you are the one who went quiet, if people have called you cold or distant or difficult, I want you to hear something. Your silence was not weakness. It was wisdom that arrived before you were ready to claim it. You learned, the hard way, the only way, that peace is not something anyone can give you. You have to protect it yourself. So keep going quiet when the room isn't safe. Keep your energy for the ones who earn it. Keep walking toward the version of yourself that no longer shrinks to make others comfortable. The right people will never need you to be loud. They'll hear you in the quiet. And that is enough.